of going live. Today, we're going to dive deep into real estate and agency, the legal implications, because I'm studying for the real estate license exam right now, and I'm just wondering what do they teach, right? And I'm in this course called Legal Aspects of Real Estate, and I thought about, hey, the best way to master and study this is just to figure out how to teach this back to someone, right? And I always thought about, hey, how can I teach these skills to my own kids? And I got to come up with the right analogies, the right simple explanations that other people can digest. Because if you can't teach it, you can't master it. But at the same time, I always thought about what am I leaving for our kids? Is it wealth or is it skills? And I would much rather leave skills and information over wealth any single day. So let's talk about agency law. Again, this is not legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an investor. I'm not giving any investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Just simply showing you all how I'm trying to explain something to my own kids. But if you have better analogies, let me know. Right? I always want to hear from you on how you can explain the concepts better so that I can teach that to my kids. All right. So, agency law. I mean, agency rules, it's just all about who represents who in a real estate transaction. And we're going to talk about why it matters, especially if you're buying or selling a home, which I hope my kids will eventually do one day. But let's talk about the basics, right? In real estate, an agent is usually someone that acts on behalf of another person. That person is the principal. Thinking of it as a or a agent for an athlete, right? Sometimes we hear about big name athletes. Baseball, there's this guy called Scott Boras. He negotiates contracts for a ton of high and famous and top tier players. Well, they're going to speak and negotiate deal for the athlete. They're going to negotiate the team, the terms, the years, dollar value, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing for real estate. So if you're selling your house, you're the principal and the real estate professional is your agent. Now, this relationship has serious responsibilities with it because an agent has to look out for the principal's best interests, not their own, right? And let's see, if you're a kid, maybe a good analogy is like, let's say you go to the candy store and you want to, I don't know, negotiate the candy prices, but you don't want to do the talking. So you have your older brother or older sister come in and they're going to step in as your agent to ask for the best candy prices. I mean, your sibling is going to try to get the best deal for you, not for themselves in that situation, right? They're just trying to be on your side. Not sure that's the best analogy, but hey, let me know you have a better one. I'm just coming up with these on the spot. So let's talk about how do you create an agency relationship? How do you do it right? An agency relationship can be formed in a couple of different ways, right? The most common one is written. If you have a listing contract of your seller, right, that's a form of a written agreement for an agent. Now, there's also implied, right, where both sides act as if they have an agreement. But it's kind of risky if you don't put it in writing. Usually in real estate, you want to put that in writing. And also, there's a process called ratification, right? The principal will later approve the agent's actions, even if there wasn't a formal agreement at first. Okay, that's a good way to think about it. And I kind of think about it like, hey, if your older brother in the same candy store scenario, right? If they negotiate a deal without telling you first, but you accept that deal afterwards for what they negotiated for you, then you ratified what they did. That's how an implied or ratified agency relationship might work, right? Because they negotiate something for you and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a great deal. Yeah, yeah, of course I'll do it. Now, there's different types of agency, right? There's single, there's dual, and single agency is where one agent represents either the buyer or the seller, but never both in the same deal. It's almost like if you have a coach, they only train one team, right? They're not trying to train two teams to go against each other because that ensures total loyalty to that side. If you're in dual agency, we covered this on a few live streams before, but that was more from the aspects of disclosing. But dual agency, and we also have bad volume during that one, so I'm trying this again. Dual agency is where you have the same agent or the same brokerage. They work for both the buyer and the seller in one transaction. That requires full disclosure to both parties because they all must agree in writing, right? It's kind of weird when you have a coaches for both teams. It's tricky, but it's allowed if everyone's cool with it. But how do you make sure that one how do you make sure it's fair, right? What if they put in the best players with that team and the worst players on that team so that that team can win? It's weird. Now, that's going to be really, really important, and you got to make sure you disclose things because you can't be giving away certain information to the other side that you know from the side. You can't say, "Hey, this is the lowest price that the seller is going to do." All right, you can't give that information to the buyer because it's not fair, right? So make sure you get consent and you disclose it. Now, as an agent, you have a fiduciary duty, right? So when you go hire an agent, they owe you certain duties, responsibilities. Now, I've learned about this acronym. It's called CARE, CARE. That's confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care, and full disclosure of everything relevant. Right? It's in your best interest to disclose everything that you know, even if you think it might not be a minor problem. It might be material to somebody else. So it's in your best interest to disclose everything that you might know about the home, especially if there's any material issues with a leaky roof or something that might affect someone's decision to buy the home. Right? Some people also add like the concept of loyalty or obedience and honesty in that mix. But the core idea is that your agent has a duty to keep your secrets. They have to handle your monthly safely and tell you anything that might affect your decisions, right? For example, if someone's negotiating something on your behalf, right? Just if they're negotiating a Pokemon card trade, they can't tell the other side how much money you have in your pocket or how much you want to spend or what other cards you might be willing to trade for that card. They have to protect your information and work for your best outcome. Hope that helps you really understand that piece. Now, the next item is let's talk about how does a relationship end, right? How do you terminate an agency relationship? And it can wrap up essentially if you close the sale, right? If the agent and the principal mutually agree to stop working together. Or it can also end if one side can't fulfill the duties, right? If the broker's license is revoked, that's gone, right? If time runs out for you to sell the property, right? If your listing agreement expires without a sale, relationship ends. So all that stuff matters. Or sometimes you just have agreements where you just give them written termination of the agency relationship, and that can happen. Okay. So that can all happen. Now, I looked at the top search question, and it was, what happens if my agent breaks the rules? If an agent breaches their duties, you're going to have the right to sue for damages if you can prove the damages, if you suffered a loss. That agent can face discipline, they can get the license suspended. That's why the consequence can be pretty big in real estate, especially when you're dealing with large transactions, especially dealing with someone's biggest investment or their homes. So you got to be really, really careful and just disclose, right? And this matters so much because it's going to impact from when you go and buy and sell a home, that's going to impact how your agent shares information with the other side, right? They're going to talk to you about how your deposit is handled, the advice you're going to get on pricing. Because if you're selling your home, you want to be sure your agent is fully committed to your interest to get you the best price. And if you're buying, you want to know that your agent is fighting for your best price and terms and any other conditions that you might think is important to you. So when you understand the difference, this can prevent you some costly mistakes. It can help you understand. It can prevent you from accidentally signing for a deal that you're not happy with. I mean, I've had friends that have signed deals with exclusive agents and they turn out to be just bad agents. They're not good, but they get stuck with that agent for like 3 months. So be very, very careful when you sign those exclusive agreements with an agent. I'm sure that works, right? It works both sides, right? If that's a great agent and they want to say, hey, I'm only going to prioritize you if we have some sort of exclusivity and they can prove their value to you, then yeah, that might make sense. But if they don't, you're not forced to do so. All right, so hopefully this was helpful, everybody. I just want to keep covering different concepts and in real estate, not just do underwriting. We got to evolve, we got to change, we got to cover different topics. If you ever want to look at any of my old underwriting videos, they're all on YouTube, youtube.com/at Kent_HE. You can access them anytime. But hey, thank you so much for joining me on the live on Friday night. I know it's late, but we're trying to stay consistent. All right. So have an amazing Friday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. Because that's what life is all about. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 540. Have a good one, everybody.